working on spacecraft, working on hypersonic vehicles. Hypersonic vehicles are vehicles, airplane-like vehicles that go 5 to 20 times the speed of sound. To give you an idea of what 5 times the speed of sound is, here it is. That's 1 mile. That's another mile. That's another mile. Literally a mile a second. And again, that's just another thing that I would have worked on for free. It was just so much working on that stuff. Now, the story I wanted to tell you about is this. A former master's student of mine, he did his undergraduate here, he did his master's here. He graduated about, 10 years ago, 11 years ago. It sounds like an eternity. So he's in charge of that AstroBee program. Just about 3 weeks ago from Cape Canaveral, they just launched the new AstroBee to go up in orbit. So he has been leading this now for a while. I just sent one of my sophomores for a summer internship at NASA Ames to work on this. And NASA Ames is a very, 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 very cool place. I mean, they just do so much there. So much, airplanes, helicopters, vehicles, certainly spacecraft, rovers, all sorts of robotics. I mean, everything goes on there. So it really is like an amusement park. And so the reason for telling you this stuff is because there's just so many cool opportunities just waiting for you. And it's just a matter of you becoming aware, somehow making time and taking control, and then going after it. And probably a word that I've been using recently in the last few years is you got to dive in. You got to dive in, because that is how most things in life are done. I mean, let's ask this. Did your parents go to parent college? I don't think so. Okay? Yeah, I won't talk about baby making. They didn't go to that one either. But you get what I'm saying. Some of the most important things in life, we just do. And most of what we do in life, we just do. We don't just say, stop, okay, let me go see what's offered at ASU, what classes, and no, it doesn't work that way. Although if you're going to look, it's good to look at ASU. I'm required to say that.
You get a sponsorship for that?
Not that other place. That's a football joke. I'm just joking though. You know what the other place is, right? Down there. Right. I'm just joking. That's a joke. I work very closely with them, and I send actually a lot of students there. And then I never speak to them again. That's a joke. That's a joke. The reason I think it's funny is probably because there are some people on this campus that actually feel that way. I'm not one of them. Not at all. Not at all. Okay. So there are a lot of cool things that are happening in the world. There's an ongoing technological revolution almost in every field that I can think of. And the reason you see this look on my face and a pause in my voice is because sometimes I feel, my goodness, I can't be the only person that realizes this. All right? But certainly, if you turn on the TV, they're not talking about it. They're talking about other things that I won't get into. All right? But it's on the internet. And let me start moving along a little bit. So we are really in revolutionary times, and the age of intelligent systems, I say here, is coming. It really still is coming. It's in its infancy. The internet, which has been around for a long time, it's in its infancy, folks. It's it's in its infancy. Looking at the internet 10 years from now and what its impact will be on our society and how we work with each other and everything is very hard to grasp that. I mean, that's hard for the most visionary people to predict. You get what I'm trying to say? But it's going to happen. It's happening. It's changing. Lots of amazing things are happening. Okay. These driverless vehicles, I mean, since this is controls, I should say something about driverless vehicles and certainly drones. We're going through a driverless vehicle revolution, a drone revolution. Now, I was working on driverless vehicles in the early 90s. Makes me feel old, but it's the truth. And I thought these driverless vehicles would be everywhere in about, 10 years, 15 years. I didn't know that I was off by another 15 years because I failed to take into consideration legal issues, and specifically this concept of the lawyer. Okay, and the fact that this nation of ours is very litigious, and so it's taken a while to get to this stage. There's lots of new laws that have been passed to try to help or reassure the big companies that they have some safety. But, let me just say this even now, we have not yet seen a 50-car collision that has resulted, because of these cars. So I think that I can hear the lawyers on the sidelines just waiting to dive in like sharks. And that happens when there's an airline disaster. That's just a fact of life, and something that. But this revolution, this driverless vehicle revolution, is here to stay. You can't put it back in the bottle. And the same thing with drones. Drones are in their infancy. I do a lot of work on ground vehicles and air vehicles, robots, commercial thinking, as well as military thinking. Some of the military thinking is some of the coolest because, in a battle, that's about the hardest situation that you can deal with. Even NASA doesn't have to deal with that. Now, NASA has to deal with a very harsh environment. You're on Jupiter. That's very harsh. Or Mars, very, 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 very harsh. Or the moon, very, very harsh. But it's not like a battlefield. And so there's lots of stuff that you can work on, folks. I myself, I like cool problems. I like hard problems. The harder they are, the cooler. All right. I like to see a problem and see. So for me, a problem is cool if his grandkids are going to be working on the problem and they're still going to be cool. That's how I assess whether a problem is cool. Most of the problems that I work on, I know that my kids' will be working on that, and they're still going to be talking about improving it, making it better. But the same problem. Just different the technologies will change. The computers will get faster. 20 years from now, even 10 years from now, the computers that they'll be using then, they'll be laughing at what we use today. Right? 10 years from now, we will have, and I've done some of these calculations. It might not be 10 years from now, it might be 15 years from now, but say 15 years from now, we will have more power in here than ASU has in their super, it's not a supercomputer, but their 400 processors, 400 computers. Okay, so we will have more power here than the Columbia NASA supercomputer, which is a national resource. They only that's expensive to use. So that that tells you a lot. And again, I want to tell you that stuff because that's not traditionally discussed in these seminars, but I think it's important to put any of these seminars in proper perspective. Okay. This thing should know. I should be able to go, and it should know. Not yet. So we have a brain, I have a brain cap. It is not my personal brain cap. No, maybe I should have one. It's a brain cap. It measures your electrical signals, and you can use it to control a ground vehicle or a drone. And that's what I need now. Okay.
Is that a real thing?
Tony, I think your control system is not good.
Oh, I didn't notice. I didn't notice that the esteemed, world-renowned Dr. Balanis was in the back. Yes, and to throw a few things up here.
By electromagnetics, it's always about control theory and system engineering.
Now we're recording all this, right? All right, because I want to have something I could send my lawyers. I love him.
Shots fired.
I do. I love him with all my heart. So you will grow to love him. All right, he grows on everyone. And he teaches electromagnetism. He has an antennas book and an electromagnetic theory book. They're both amazing books. When I just look at them, I go, damn, all this work, and it's beautiful. And so I love him for that. I mean, okay. See, look what you did now. I'm all emotional and everything. I acknowledge him. No one else, just him. And my wife. I didn't put my wife on there. She should be on there, my wife. Okay, and my students. I'll talk a little bit about what controls is about, where it's used, the courses, the faculty, the job opportunities, and I've already started talking about this ongoing technological revolution. The coolest thing that's happening, besides, of course, electromagnetic theory, is in the biomedical arena, by far, because they're using stem cell research there to repair organs, to grow organs, cloning, all sorts of stuff. So this is cool on another level. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work on spacecraft, hypersonic vehicles, ground, air robots, missiles hitting aircraft, missiles hitting missiles, space weapons hitting missiles, etc., and so forth, and I thought all that stuff is cool. But growing organs, that's another level of cool. And I think that's important for you to be aware of that. And you may be thinking, hey, I'm an electrical engineer. That's biomedical stuff. Hey, all this organ growth stuff that's happening, there's all sorts of instrumentation that's going to be designed by electrical engineers. Some of it, I'm sure, will be high-frequency instrumentation, requiring knowledge of his stuff. He's leaving us.
I ate the pizza.
What did he say?
Came for the pizza.
He came for the pizza. That's good. He's a good man. I just short-circuited myself. What was I saying? Even this biomedical arena, there's a lot of stuff that you can play a role in as controls people. Okay, as controls people, you should think, okay, if something needs to be done precisely, something needs to, how do we do things that we want to do precisely? How do we learn? Well, there's feedback. Feedback is the key to intelligence. All intelligence. Even, and this is on tape, even that artificial intelligence. And so I like to joke, they call that artificial. They should call this real intelligence. All right? And I back that up by saying all the airplanes we fly on, the cars that we drive in, the emission systems in these cars, the engine control systems, all of that is based on this stuff, not the artificial intelligence. Okay, so that's important to know. That's very important in your learning. as you move forward and you learn about artificial intelligence. And I encourage you to take those classes and learn as much as possible. I encourage you strongly to take neural networks and learn about machine learning. Neural networks is taught by one of our professors, Dr. Jenny C. I strongly encourage you to take that. That's very, very important, especially these days where neural networks is on fire. Okay, machine learning is on fire, and you definitely have to take that stuff. And it really fits in with this control stuff quite nicely. Okay. So what is controls? I typically use a feedback diagram like this to describe what controls here. P here represents the physical system, or as we call it in controls, the plant, the system that we're trying to control. And really that plant could be anything. That is why I fell in love with controls. I mean, I liked all the other disciplines. I like signal processing, I liked electromagnetism and the others as well, but I fell in love with controls because I saw, boy, I can apply this to anything. Anything that has inputs and outputs. Anything. A car, input, output. A spacecraft, inputs, outputs. A nuclear reactor, inputs, outputs. Children.
Not yet.
That's inputs and outputs, but it's a very chaotic system. No, it's... No, actually, my kids are cool. So far, they haven't, I've been blessed so far. Yeah, I was afraid I was going to get kids like me. I wasn't always this yellow person talking about controls. Okay, so this is a system we're trying to control. Y represents the output of the system. Think about, for example, the speed of the car, or the temperature inside the semiconductor oven, or the temperature inside the nuclear reactor. That was a big deal at Chernobyl, the Chernobyl accident that occurred. That was a fundamental, that's like a case study in how they messed up and they didn't think about controls. It was fundamentally a controls mess up. It's like they didn't have controls 101. I'll leave it at that. If you want to talk about that more, we can, but that was a big deal. K here represents the controller that we're trying to design, and you take classes to learn how to design that controller. This R here is a reference command that represents the desired output. So that could represent, for example, your desired speed, or your desired temperature in the oven. Or if it's a spacecraft, maybe your desired direction that you're moving in, or any vehicle, etc., and so forth. These Ds are disturbances. There's always disturbances present, always. They may be small, but they're always there. If you're driving through Texas, you're certainly going to encounter tailwinds, headwinds, crosswinds, and that's where I really learned about these things in a big way, because I was driving through Texas, and I believe Texas is the definition of infinity. It just goes on forever. Just goes on forever. Yep. And so I'm driving through there, and all of a sudden this crosswind comes and literally tries to knock you off the road. I said, oh boy, those D's that I talk about are real. I knew they were real, but it's when you experience one of these. And I think I was driving a little too fast too. But I won't talk about that on camera.
It's hard to do in Texas.
Yeah. It was a $300 ticket. Here, it's on camera. Okay. That was...
That's a major L.
It's a cool story. I'm a young professor here at ASU. I'm going to do some consulting work at Eglin Air Force Base, which is across country, and so I want to get there quickly. And so I'm driving my little sports car a little faster than I should, and so I get pulled over by a policeman who was driving like a Ford Mustang, and I was going pretty fast. And I look in my rear view mirror and I see this thing coming behind me, and it's accelerating. I say, my goodness, this guy's crazy. He comes up right behind me and flashes and pulls me over. And then I know, okay. And the driver's license and everything. But here's the cool part of the story. Now, my car has in it like 3 computers, 10 books, books all over the place, clothes thrown all over the place. It looks like I just robbed someone's apartment. That's what it looks like. And the officer looks in there and he goes, please tell me that this belongs to you. Now, he was very nice. I told him where I was going, where I came from and everything, and he wrote me up for a ticket and said I should drive slower, and so I did. He was very nice, and so I've driven slower ever since that day. Okay. Noise. There's always noise. Regardless of the application you're dealing with. Always. And so we try to design this controller so that this overall feedback loop has very nice properties. So your system, whatever it is, you might want to slow it down. You might want to speed it up. If it's a high-performance fighter, like the Joint Strike Fighter F-35 or the F-22, which are inherently unstable systems. If it's the boiling water reactor, like at Chernobyl, again, when you turn it on, the temperature just naturally wants to grow. It's naturally an unstable system. Whether it's a rocket, you perturb a rocket like this, it doesn't just naturally typically come back. And missiles are often designed to be unstable so that, like the fighters, so that they can accelerate in the plane. I discovered this when I was about 7 years old. Outside the car, took my arm, placed my arm outside the car, and I was doing this. The car's moving, the wind, and so I was just. That's exactly what happens to a fighter. If it gets perturbed, it will just naturally want to do this. It's unstable. That's exactly what happens to a missile. It does this. Certainly if you're balancing a broomstick, all right, if you perturb it, it naturally wants to fall over. It's just like the fighter. It's just like the missile. The boiling water reactor, where the temperature is going up, that's a thermodynamic version of this, but it's the same type of idea. So we may want the controller to stabilize this. Okay, so that's very important. Imagine this, and I like giving this as an example. You're balancing a broomstick, and I hope that we all can say that we have balanced a broomstick, because otherwise we have not lived, right? A broomstick, we're balancing a broomstick. Now imagine you're balancing this broomstick. Now if you had to balance it for a few minutes, okay. But what if you had to balance it for a couple of hours? Then it's not okay anymore, right? Especially if someone's pushing you. Or how about if you're taking pictures while you're balancing the broomstick and people are throwing things at you while you're balancing the broomstick? By the way, what I just described is exactly what happens when an F-22 goes over some country and is taking pictures. They call that spying. Okay? And then the people down there, they get upset, and so they throw things up. Those things they're throwing are called missiles. And so you're balancing this F-22 that's very unstable. An F-22, it's like balancing a stick this big. Okay, so you know that balancing a broomstick, we can do that. If we had to do it for 2 hours, not cool. If you have to balance something that's this big, even for just a few minutes, you can't do it. Even if you're a world-class athlete can't balance something that they just can't move. They don't have the bandwidth to do it. So you need a control system to stabilize this thing. Otherwise, the operator workload would be insane. Okay, you get what I'm saying? So we design these control systems to speed up or slow down or stabilize. Okay, and this design that we do is on the basis of models. And that's what these classes are all about, fundamentally. Learning how to do that. And each class teaches you one aspect of that modeling, how you model it, and how you analyze the model, and then how you use the model to design a control system. In a nutshell, that's what all these classes are about that I'm going to talk about a little bit. Okay, I think I gave you the idea of systems that can be controlled. Oh, and this presentation is on my website. You have a copy of it. You can see it anytime. It has a lot more detail. I mean, I could spend weeks on this presentation, literally. Where is controls? It really is everywhere. I made this list many years ago. I tried to make the list somewhat comprehensive, and I look at the list today and I look at it and I go, my goodness, I can easily triple the size of the list, because there's just so many places where controls is being used today. And there's a few slides here. So, I mean, on Wall Street, in the defense, ecological systems, economics, you know, I mean, I could just go on and on and on. In the medical arena, I just talked a bit about what's going on in the organ growth arena. A lot of controls there to try to grow these things precisely requires, let's say this, I'll use the term ovens or reactors, and it's like a semiconductor oven. It's like you're making a cake, but it's just a lot fancier than a cake. Okay, but same type of ideas. So controls are really pretty much everywhere, and I think this is why I fell in love with controls, because I saw, my goodness, you could use it everywhere. And when I learned controls, and you've heard of Bode plots, right?
Nope.
Nope?
Nope.
Are you messing with me?
We're not there yet.
All right, you've heard of them, you haven't studied them. I didn't ask you if you studied them, but have you heard of them?
Never even heard of it.
No? No. Okay, so you're being serious.
I mean,
All right, good. That's okay. That's cool. We tight. He wearing a NASA shirt. Okay. So there you go. There you go. Cool. There you go. Cool. Let me keep going. So you're going to learn about Bode plots. You're going to see Bode plots in your circuit classes, and all of these engineering disciplines, all these areas within electrical engineering, and actually outside of electrical engineering and mechanical engineering and biomedical engineering and chemical engineering, they all use Bode plots. Okay, and Bode plots, well, was invented by a guy named Bode, and he was a controls guy. And I remember first learning about this stuff and just thinking, wow, controls has been at the heart of everything. And right now, I mean, we're seeing this robotics revolution, drone revolution, automotive or driverless vehicle revolution. None of this would happen without controls. I mean, not at all. Not at all. Okay. Courses. Okay. So you've had basic circuits? Yes. Okay. Cool. Maybe there you learn a little bit about differential equations and Laplace transforms, and certainly in math you had a diffuse class. That's important stuff because most systems are governed by differential equations. We got to the moon by using Newton's laws of motion, fundamentally differential equations. Okay? The cars, everything, differential equations everywhere. Everywhere. Okay, so if I ever see an artificial intelligence algorithm and they're trying to control the system and there isn't a differential equation in there, something smells real bad. I feel like they're trying to sell me the Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm from New York City, and so I happen to know that I think it's not for sale. I'm pretty sure. Okay, Signals and systems, very important. If you can have the first signals and systems as well as the second class, even better. But often students are taking the second class while they're starting to take these control classes. These two control classes are our bread and butter baseline control classes. EEE 480, I usually teach. EEE 481 is typically taught by either Dr. Sakalis or his former PhD student who's working here at ASU. I call him Ashfaq, okay? That's what, but he's doctor. Okay, so he teaches that class. Let me say something about these two classes. This EEE 481 is supposed to be the more applied class. Okay, and so in that class they teach you a little bit about controls, and it's in continuous time. You use Laplace transforms, but then they teach you how to take that, how to design that controller, and then how to implement it in a digital computing something or other. And that something or other is either a microcontroller, a microprocessor, a computer, okay? All right, they may be doing now some Arduino stuff in there, and maybe some Raspberry Pi stuff in there, all right? But for years, we use a PC 104 board, which is a board about this big. It's very, very powerful. You can put a lot of stuff on that. Okay, and I know Dr. Sakalis uses that for controlling semiconductor ovens and many other things. So this is supposed to be the more applied class. Now, when you're implementing the control law, you go digital. Okay, so that means you're going to learn about Z-transforms as well. Okay, and so now think about this. You're learning about Laplace transforms, continuous time, Z-transforms, and discrete time. This is supposed to be the easier, simpler class, but just by the very fact that you're dealing with more concepts, it can be complicated. 480, which I usually teach, that is typically, it's all continuous time. Just Laplace transforms, there's no discrete stuff. We may talk about it a few times. I give some insight in how you actually build this inside of a computer or a microcontroller or an Arduino or an FPGA, etc. But it's this class that tends to be more applied. Okay, with that said, if you're just going to pick one class to take and no other class, and you're not going to be doing advanced controls, then probably I would say take this 481 class because it gives you a combination of continuous time stuff and discrete digital stuff. You get sort of a big picture. Now, as far as it being the easier class, I already said what I had to say, namely, you're doing both continuous time and discrete time, and so that is a lot of concepts to learn. Now, if you're going to be doing more advanced work, then I would strongly recommend that you take 480 first and then take 481. If you take 480 first and then 481, it should almost be, I joke about this every semester, it should almost be not allowed because if you take 480, you will understand controls really, really well. And then if you get into 481 and you're sitting side by side with someone that is just learning controls for the first time, it ain't fair. It's not fair at all. And so, yeah, some of my students take this class and go in there and, for a month they can relax, maybe a month and a half, because they've learned so much. So again, if you're going to take one class, I would recommend this one because it teaches you a little bit about everything. But if you're going to do longer term work and you want to work on fancy control systems, then I would recommend taking 480 first and then 481. Okay, and that you can speak to my students and you can ask them. This is a good way of doing it. At the graduate level, and I will beg all of you to go to graduate school. Now, I'm not required to say that, but when I speak to students, it's like I'm speaking to my own kids. You should go to graduate school. You should be, I know you may be thinking right now, I'm not sure if I want to complete this. All right, I know it's tough. I know it's tough, but try to really see if you could make that sacrifice and get that master's degree. Not because you'll make $10,000, $15,000 a year more. That's kind of cool, but because you'll have a lot more job flexibility. You'll be able to work on a lot cooler problems. I would not have been able to work on the cool things that I worked on without my master's degree. And some of that cool stuff, hey, I really needed a PhD to work on. And so if you really want to work on really, really cool stuff, then get as much education as you can. Think about that PhD maybe. He said, hell no. You know, I mean, that's just, he went like, and you could look it up. It says, hell no.
I'm just trying to get past differential equations.
Right. But hey, you know, you hear what I'm saying, and I'm trying to say it in a way that you can understand. Hey, anything worthwhile is not easy, folks. Anything. I mean, I do not wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to eat all these vegetables. I don't like vegetables. I want to eat a Big Mac and then eat another one. You know, etc. So things are tough, and that goes with everything. And so this stuff is tough too, but it's worth it. If you stick with it, it's really worth it. You know, with anything. Friendships, everything is tough, right? Friendships, marriage, raising kids. Thank you, Dad, that you didn't kill me. Okay. So at the graduate level, we have linear systems. Linear systems is EEE 582. That's typically taught by either myself or Dr. Sakalis. You learn about systems that are described by many differential equations. Systems that can have many inputs and many outputs. Whereas these classes here, you have one input, one output. You got to learn that. You got to master that, because that's the foundation for everything. And again, most of the stuff that we see flying and that we drive around uses knowledge from these two classes, mainly. The fancy stuff, the really, really fancy stuff, like the high-performance fighters, that uses more stuff in here. Okay? There's nonlinear systems. That's taught by Dr. Sakalis. Transform theory, I've taught it. Dr. Sakalis has taught it. It's also taught by individuals in the signals and systems area. Random signal theory, that's another class that our students take. That's typically taught by someone in the signals and systems or communications area. Robust multivariable control, that's my baby. That's where you have many inputs and many outputs. That's my baby. Optimal control is typically taught by Dr. Sakalis. It's also offered in another department. We used to teach it together, but I think there was a divorce or something, and we don't teach it together or something like that. We needed to go to counseling or something and work things out. Now, these things happen. Professors with different ideas, etc. and so forth. Neural networks. That is Dr. Jenny C's baby. Neural networks. And again, you should take neural networks. You'll learn about neural networks, different types of neural networks, machine learning, maybe even some deep learning. Deep learning refers to having neural networks that are large. And if you're wondering what is a neural network, just think of it like this. It is a way of approximating complicated functions that might have many inputs and many outputs. So it's like math in there to just approximate whatever function you want to approximate. Okay, that's the simplest I can do to explain what a neural network does. And it is very powerful. And if you take some serious math classes, then you can really then appreciate the power of the neural network. And then you'll understand why it's on fire and why all this machine learning is on fire. And I'll leave it at that. Okay. Filtering of stochastic processes, 581. Jenny C. Teaches that as well. Adaptive control, that's Dr. Sakalis' baby. Okay, he's our resident adaptive control person. Now, there's other classes that our graduate students often take, and these classes are offered in other disciplines. There's system identification. That is taught by Dr. Dan Rivera in chemical engineering. And it's offered roughly every year and a half. Most of these graduate classes are offered, except linear systems is offered every fall. All right, but a lot of these more advanced classes are offered every year and a half, 3 semesters. And you can find the schedules and you can see. So system identification is another class that's offered. System identification addresses the following. If you measure the inputs of a system and the outputs of a system, what's inside the system? Just trying to figure out what's in there. And that's very, very important. And just think about this. You're in an airplane, or how about this? Someone else is in the airplane, not you. Something goes wrong with the airplane. The mathematical model has changed. Maybe a wing has fallen off or something like that. Small little thing, right? So you need a new mathematical model because you need to redesign the control system. Okay, you might even use some adaptive control in order to adapt to this wing falling off. Okay, so that's where you use system identification. And you may even try to optimize your control design. So there is an optimization class. There's one in the math department that my students take with Professor Middleman. This semester, some of my students are taking a class in industrial engineering. It's on convex optimization, and it's also a very, very good class. Again, this is important to do some advanced work. And as engineers, we want to optimize whatever it is that we do. We don't just want to do it. We want to do it well. And we ask, well, how can we
make it better?
Make it as good as we can? Okay? And so you have to define what you mean by good. Right? Good is somewhat subjective. Like what's a good friend? What's a good wife? What's a good professor? A lot of these things are subjective, except for the wife thing. My wife, she's perfect. I got to say this for the camera. Okay? And I know she can hear me. Okay. But you understand what I'm trying to say by there really isn't anything that's really optimal. It's subjective. All right? Life is about trade-offs, and that's in life, and that is also in designing engineering systems. You might improve something, but something else gets worse. You might make something worse, but something else gets better. It's very rare, except for my wife example, that you can have everything perfect. Okay, and then there's numerical analysis. Again, that's another class that our students take. Okay, Okay, there are two options that students think about. There is the MSE exam option. That's the option that most students choose. Then there is a thesis option. There are a few students choose that. Now, I'm one of those professors that will go around saying this, that if you really like something and you know you like it and you want to show your future employer that you've learned something, do that thesis. Because a thesis is nothing more than doing a project, doing a big project, and you write it up. And we're not looking for a work of art in terms of writing up a thesis. It's not like that. It's not at all like that. You pick something that you like. Professors will interact with you to try to help you out technically, algorithmically, and everything to make sure you go in the right direction. And if you get started soon, then really the thesis, and this is I feel like it's a hidden secret, but the thesis, if you do the thesis option, then that's 2 less classes you have to take. And so really, if you get your thinking right, it should be the obvious choice of doing the thesis. But get this, going to college should be an obvious choice too, isn't it? Shouldn't it? Apparently it's not to millions, to most. All right, but it should be obvious, but it isn't. Same thing with a thesis. All right, I think engineers, scientists, they don't want to write, and so the thesis, oh hell no. Like, what is that? What did you say? Oh hell no. Oh hell no. That's right.
Shot that.
Boy, that sounded bad. We got to edit.
There's nothing too bad.
All right, okay. So think about the thesis. Just think about it. I mean, the message I'm trying to say is that, even graduate school, it's more sacrifice. Now, you know about sacrifice because you're here. You're already weird. Being here makes you weird, and I mean that in an affectionate and a nice way. All right? But you get what I'm saying. All right? You've made tremendous sacrifice just to be here. And, certainly getting to this, that takes some more sacrifice, but I know all of you can do it. It's just a matter of saying, I want to do it, and not getting distracted. Distractions, you got to put them aside. When you graduate, then you'll have a nice income, and then you can go about your distractions. Okay, whatever they may be. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So which ones are for master's program?
That's graduate school. Okay, so these guys.
All of them?
No. So to get a master's degree, I believe it's 30 units. So divide that by 3. It's like 10 classes. If you do, and you should check this because rules change here, and I'm not always the first person that they tell. All right, so you should check these, and there's very good people that you should. We have advisors here that are phenomenal. And you should go to them, and they can help you out tremendously. And I'm just joking about, I should know the rules. I'm a professor here, so I have no excuses. I should know the rules. Yes?
Every TA I've had for graduate students, they say it's like a 5-year pathway to graduate, 3 to 5 years.
For a master's?
For a PhD.
Oh, okay.
So why?
So when you say PhD, say it lower, because you might cause some people to have a heart attack. Go say PhD. All right, so a master's. Folks, if you can, take that 4+1. The accelerated master's 4+1, please do that, because that's a cool deal. You get out, you get your master's degree. That master's degree is important. And I'm speaking to you not as a professor, but as a friend. Get it. It will pay off big time. It will give you, not just you'll make $15,000 a year, but you'll have job security. When the layoffs come, and there will be layoffs, you'll have that extra piece of paper to help you out. So the master's, the 4+1 is the good way to do a master's. If you don't do the 4+1, then it typically takes 2 years to do a master's. Maybe 2 years in a summer. Okay. Certainly, if you get on top of things, you should get it done in 2 years. 2 years in a summer easily. You should be able to do that. Okay. PhD by itself is typically 3 years. It could be more, but at the minimum, it's typically 3 years. So you're right in saying you said 5 years. So 2 years for master's, 3 years for PhD. That's 5 years. But I would say that you should look at it this way. Think at it that you're going to be working for 40 years or so, and so 5 years of some suffering so that you can benefit the next 35 years. That's pretty cool. Okay, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it again in a second. I would. And I come from pretty humble beginnings. My parents were, they were both second grade. They had second grade educations. My dad was a window cleaner. My mom, she was a smart person in the house. Why she married my father, I don't know. That's one of those unsolved problems. That's like, I love my father, but I would have told my mom, hell no.
Oh, man.
I love him. I miss him and everything, but yes.
If we had enough credit to take graduate level classes in our bachelor's degree, which ones would you recommend?
Oh, okay, so good. So I have, a couple of students now that are undergraduates, and they have gotten ahead. I've got 2 undergraduates. They've taken linear systems, nonlinear systems, and multivariable control. But these guys are killers.
Sharks.
Yeah, no, they eat the sharks for breakfast. Okay, so, but those are the main, and both of them are in nonlinear systems too, and they're undergraduates too. So it can be done, but that maybe is a little bit extreme. I think linear systems, multivariable control, those are good classes. And when you get to that stage, certainly you can come see me, and I'll be happy to talk to you, and we can evaluate what is right for you based on your interests. Cool? But yeah, message is get as much education as you can, folks. And that's not nerdy talk. That's, hey, I'm trying to tell you, so you can have a cool job that you love, and you'll get paid well, and you'll have job security. And the problem that you might have then is that you might not want to go home because you like what you do. Now that's another problem. You should see a counselor because you do need to go home and fulfill whatever obligations you have. Yes?
I'm kind of getting the impression like we need to be superstar students for master's and PhD programs.
I did not mean to give that impression.
I mean, so that's not the case?
Oh, hell no.
Like straight A?
Hell no. My wife would tell you that about me. Now, I thought that was funny. I worked on that last night.
We do need a 3.0 to get into the master's.
Okay.
3.5 for the 4+1, and if you want to go directly to PhD, you need 3.5 as well.
Okay. There you go. And let me say this. Thank you so much. Let me say this about, and I'm sorry I gave the impression that you have to be. Let me undo that right now. At the undergraduate, so I'm gonna say that the undergraduate classes and then the undergraduate level is very hard. You're taking 5 classes, 6 classes. You're being bombarded with all this. At the graduate level, you take 2. At the undergraduate level, there's a lot of classes where the average is a C. And it's been that way since I was a student. Okay? At the graduate level, the grades tend to be higher. All right, now, the students are taking classes that they like. The professors, in principle, are teaching classes that they like. So they're smiling more. And so these classes tend to be more enjoyable. I have a lot of seminars where I have graduate students talking to the undergraduates, and you can hear the graduate students saying, yeah, are the classes harder? Yeah, but it's only 2, maybe 3. and it's on something that you like. And the professors, they like the class, they want to help you. And the TAs, they like the class, they want to help you. And so, no. Do you have to be a genius? No. The 4+1 program is on fire. I mean, it really is on fire. Now, for the 4+1, you need a 3.5 to get in. But if you can't get into the 4+1, you can still do a master's. Okay, you can still do a master's, and that's fine. I've got students that didn't get the 3.5, and they're doing a master's, and maybe they had a 3.3 or a 3.2, and they're doing a master's. Why? Because they understand that if they have that master's degree, they'll get paid more. You'll be treated differently, completely, by the company, and you'll have many more offers, etc., and so forth. And the world is getting more technological, so the more education you get, the better off you will be. The less you have, well, that's a price. Okay, so I'm begging you, and no one here at ASU I don't get a cut of the action or anything like that. I'm begging you to get that master's degree because it will help you. And if you're not married, it will help you, your family, your children, etc., and so forth. Forever. It will change everything. Yeah.
Is it typical to get a master's and a PhD, or do people choose one or the other?
No. So usually you get a bachelor's degree, then you get a master's. Then if you really are messed up, in other words, if you've been bitten really hard by this technical snake, then you keep going for a PhD. Okay, and I joke. So I joke about the PhD. Remember earlier I said, hey, say it low. Hey, years ago it was tough to talk about a PhD because these days with the 4+1 program on fire, lots of students are asking about PhD. Lots of students, and I expect that 10 years from now, you're going to have a lot more students pursuing PhD. That's just natural. That makes sense. That's obvious to me because the world is getting much, much more technological. The next 20 years are going to make the last 2,000 years look like almost a Stone Age. And that's been true. Just think about this. The electron or the neutron, we've known about their existence now about 100 years. Look what's happened in 100 years. It really is unbelievable. It really, you can't describe it any other way. If one of those people showed up, they would probably die because they couldn't process all that has happened. Except maybe Newton. Newton would say, yeah, they should have done this in 100 years. But he's unique. Okay, I'm a Newton fan. Okay, let's see. Get your MS. I talked about the controls faculty. There's a Professor Lai. He works in controls too. He doesn't teach any of the main controls faculty. He does a lot of brain stuff, as Jenny C does. Jenny C has done a lot of work with rats, with monkeys. Dr. Sakalis has also worked with rats, specifically on work dealing with epileptic seizure detection and suppression. So there's really a lot of cool stuff to work on, folks, in controls and all the other areas as well. So these are research topics and applications that we all engage in, and I've pretty much talked about many of them. Job opportunities, the lists are very, very, very long. All these big companies hire controls people, and they need analytic thinking, critical thinking, algorithmic thinking, and again, remember this, that if you want to do something precise, it requires feedback. And that's what controls is about, feedback. Using a sensor to feedback information, and then using that in order to make decision in the presence of uncertainty. Okay? Questions? Do you have questions on anything? Because I'm pretty much done. You can ask me anything you want, right? They can ask me anything you want. Come on, go ahead.
So I understand that in controls, there's a lot of PCB like programming, or some of it. Like, is that a thing?
Okay, so let me say something about, if you're an engineer these days, you got to learn to program. Let me say it this way. My kids started programming, I think, in 2nd grade. I don't think I started programming until my 2nd year of college, or 1st year of college. But kids, 2nd grade, and they don't go to a special school or anything like that. They start basic programming. You graduate as an engineer these days, you should learn some programming language. C, C++, Python, whatever you learn, try to learn it well, because that by itself can open up many jobs. Okay? And that by itself, you can go pick up a book, pick up several books. I like several books, so I can't read that one. I'll read this one. And I like having different resources to rely on. You can learn to be a good programmer on your own, little by little. And you can take classes too to help you out. In all the disciplines, electromagnetic theory, signals and systems, signal processing, circuits, we all using MATLAB to do something. And so there's some programming there. And if you want to run whatever your code fast, that's where you go to C++ to get that speed. Okay? And so I recommend to everybody, hey, learn to program, because that's important. Is there more programming in controls than the other disciplines? No. There's programming in all of them. It would be very difficult for me to say there's more programming in one area versus another. Whatever engineering discipline, not just in electrical engineering, but outside, mechanical engineering, and there's a bunch of sub-areas there. There's programming everywhere, folks. Okay? I hope that was cool.
So, as far as what I saw in there, so are there only 2 undergraduate classes for controls?
There are 2 undergraduate classes in controls, yeah. And then there's all those other classes that are graduate classes, but you can take some of them as an undergraduate.
So so we have a minimum amount of course classes that we have to take in order to get our degree and everything. So this would probably go in tandem with another pathway then, or how would you suggest if you wanted to focus on controls, since there's only the 2 classes? Would you recommend?
Oh, okay. So, certainly those 2 control classes, certainly you're going to take the signals 1, the signals 2, and then you can take linear systems as an undergraduate. You can do that. I have often recommended, there's classes in mechanical engineering, in robotics. We have a new program in robotics. It's a graduate program, but there's classes that are available to undergraduates as well. And so there's quite a few. So if you're interested in controls, there's really a lot of classes that you can take, not just these 2.
Okay.
There's a lot of options. We just have to, when you get to that, then we can really talk about it.
Right.
Cool?
Cool.
And it is cool. A lot of cool stuff. Questions?
When we graduate, if we specialize in controls, will there be that annotation on the degree?
Come to my office and I will personally put that annotation on there for you.
It's not on there. It's an internal designation.
which is why you can come to my office and I will put it on there for you, okay?
Dr. Rodriguez will gladly deface your diploma for you.
They call it graffiti, right, or defacing, right? Oh gosh, I wouldn't touch the diploma, right? You worked on it so hard. You can come to my office and I like to look at it. I'll put a sticker on the outside on the glass. Questions? Any other questions, folks?
Have you heard of, I thought earlier when you were talking, I thought of a few things. One is Neuralink. They're trying to insert an electrode into brains and interface a brain with a computer.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I think I told you earlier that I have a brain cap, and the brain cap is not, doesn't go in your brain, it's on the outside, but and measures the electrical signals so that you can use that to control a robot on the ground or a robot in the air or anything. And but certainly there are people that actually get inside the brain. As I said, Dr. Sakalis, Dr. C, they work with rats, and they're actually getting in there and trying to detect certain things and get certain behaviors. And the reason for doing that is because if we can do that with rats and monkeys, then we can help human beings. And so that the brain, we know a lot about the human body. The next 15 years is the brain. It's all about the brain. We're going to learn a lot about the brain. There's a world project called the Brain Project. A lot of research, a lot of money has been put into it. That's exciting stuff. Really, because we know, relatively speaking, we know a little about the brain. But I know that in the next 15 years, we're going to learn a lot about the brain based on what's going on right now and the different tools that they have of different ways of going in there and analyzing things. It's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. We've learned a lot about how people learn over the last 10 years. I mean, they've actually measured what's going on in there when people are really learning. And so there's lots of studies that have been done, real studies, scientific studies. Here's how to learn. This is how you should learn. Not this way. A lot of people think, okay, if you read something and read it over and you read it over and you read it over and you read it over, that's how you learn. Actually, that's been shown that's not good. But if you have learned some knowledge and you put aside the book and then you try to think, what did I learn? And bringing it out of your brain, that's how you get short-term memory into long-term memory in a very substantive way. And so we've learned, and it's been proven, and with a lot of studies as well as measuring it. It's pretty phenomenal stuff. Okay, folks, I think that's it, right? Yes. You take care. I hope to see you soon.